Hey, how you doing, Priscilla?
I'm good. How are you?
We're good, thank you. We're good. I'd just like to introduce you to Richard,
So Richard, hi Pricilla, how you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Not too bad.
and of course,
Good, good, good.
Kwabna.
Yeah,
You-
the one and
Yes, of
only.
course.
I
Hey.
sound a bit nervous in that, but it's all right. It's all right.
man, we just want to thank you for jumping on this podcast. Late notice, of course. Literally, we just gave you a
Late no,
shout.
but no, it's cool. It's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Let the listeners know what you're about, what you do.
Okay, so my name is Pricilla. I currently work at in a prison as a recovery worker, supporting men that are over 18 with drug and alcohol issues, but also a bit of mental health. But prior to that, I have been working within the mental health sector for about 6 years, and that's everything from working in private schools dedicated to children with challenging behavior to hostels, and working in a semi-independent home for ex-offenders. So yeah,
Wow, sounds like you've been doing a lot.
yeah,
It's
I
great.
try.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, what was interesting for me the other day, right? I'm not gonna say
Mm,
the person's name, of course, but so I
okay,
spoke to a friend, right? I haven't spoken to him in a little while, right? And
right.
was talking, and then he was like, "Ah, do you know what happened to me? Like, I had a mental breakdown." I was like,
Okay.
"Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, like, dude, I woke up, and they were telling me to calm down and whatnot, and they just told me that I just went crazy and then just blanked out." I was like,
Mm,
wow, what the hell is that? And how the heck does that happen? You know,
mm.
like from your experience, like, what are the underlying issues to kind of make someone kind of go that way?
I think every person is different. There's the standard generalization when it comes to being having a mental health disorder. But I think when someone is going through something, um, funny enough, it can be the polar opposites of each other. So you can have someone that will sleep 18 hours straight, and then another individual will not be sleeping for like 7 days, like up consistently, 24 hours, 72 hours, 48 hours, whatever.
Mm.
Uh, there's someone that, will not socialize with anyone, will isolate themselves, and then there's that person that is out every single night. And I think for us, we kind of tend to look towards more of the negative things aside. So if someone's not socializing, if someone's ignoring phone calls, if someone's sleeping all the time, then we think, okay, this person's having a mental health breakdown. But really and truly, if someone's consistently out all the time and it's not their character, if they're not sleeping and it's not their character, that can also classify as a mental health breakdown. Um, but I just think it depends on the individual, and obviously, the individual they themselves will should know, and then it depends on the people that surround them. So if you know one of your friends, they're possibly acting out of character and it's quite consistent. And although they may not be able to see it, you may be able to see it. Then yeah, you should be concerned.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah,
Priscilla. Yes,
Yes.
yes, Quabs. Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
How do you think like people can deal with like their mental health? Do you think like medication or like a therapy type of thing?
I okay. So I'm not all for medication. I will not lie. I don't. I'm not a big
Mm.
fan of medication. However, I don't. I wouldn't say neglect medication. I'm here
Mm-hmm.
for therapy, and I'm here for CBT. So that's cognitive behavior therapy, where it teaches you how your feelings and your thoughts and your actions all link in one with your behavior. Um,
Okay.
so I'm all for it, kind of like more of the psychosocial, like digging in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have psychotherapy where it takes you back. So it takes you back to your childhood, kind of, where does your fears come from? When
oh,
something
okay.
makes you angry, what is that trigger and what made you angry? And when you go back to your childhood, sometimes you can see the link. So
Mm.
I'm here for that. When it comes to medication, I
Mm-hmm.
would always tell someone not to just rely on the medication, because I always see depression as a fruit, and there's a root. So there's a seed and there's a fruit. So depression is the fruit of whatever has been planted inside of you. So in order to overcome that depression, you need to know what's going on the inside. You need to find that seed. And the medication, really and truly, it just suppresses the depression. It doesn't deal with it. It doesn't help you out. It just helps you cope with the next day. Like some antidepressants don't even help you cope. They kind of like zombify you. Like you get into a zombie. You don't want to wake up. You don't want to do nothing. So I always tell people, like from my personal opinion, that don't just rely on medication, but seek that support, which is therapy. And I always say, kind of seek it from somebody that you don't know. If you like, it's great to talk to friends or whatever, but you want to be in a position whereby you can speak to someone and they have zero opinions about you. They don't know who you are. They don't know what you're going through. They don't know your circle, and they can give you their perspective and their knowledge and their understanding of whatever it is that you're sharing with them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
So
Yeah.
like if you're on medication, it's like the problem's more likely to come back. Whereas if you're in like a therapy, like if you're doing therapy, you're more likely to understand why you are the way you are, type of thing.
Yeah. And therapy teaches you how to deal with. Therapy gives you another perspective outside of your own. That's why I say don't go to friends, because we're easy to listen to what our friends will say.
Yeah.
But what may work for our friends may not necessarily work for us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas if a therapist comes from you, you know that they're coming from perspective where they don't know you at all. So whether it works for you or not, for them, what they're trying to do is to give you the best thing that you need for yourself, like without it affecting them or without them.
Yeah.
It doesn't benefit them in any single way. They're here to give you a job, and that's it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to therapy, not only are you learning about what's wrong or what happened, what the underlying issues are, but then they're now teaching you how to deal with those situations. So something as simple as if this makes you angry, they'll teach you something like, rather than reacting, give yourself 10 seconds, count from 10 down to 1, breathe, and then think about it. It's little things, like minute things like that therapy sessions provide, and which helps you get a better perspective on life.
Yeah, it's like when you say the therapist doesn't know you, they give you more of like an objective opinion type of thing. But if it's your friends, it's more like subjective. They don't want to hurt your feelings or say anything wrong that could jeopardize your friendship with them and that type of thing.
Exactly.
So yeah,
I think the reason as well. I think the reason a lot of people do turn to medication is because people find it hard to open up to other people. So I think the medication it's a quick fix, isn't it? It's a quick fix for 24 hours. But the thing you've got to realise is that when you wake up again the next morning, that problem is still there. And I think that's where the issue of being an addict comes into it as well, because you're now dependent on a substance to make you feel better. And that substance, again, is obviously easily addictive. And that's when you become dependent. You can't go, a few hours without it. But that issue that, can be solved by just opening up to someone is still there. And yes, it's a big issue now. I think a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but it's definitely a big issue that I think if we are, I don't know really. I mean, Pricilla, do you feel as if, I know we're all from African families, do you feel as if we open up to our parents, they're going to be very welcoming to our problems, or do you feel as if they'll be a bit hard hitting? Because do you know what I mean? It's like some parents will be like, "Come on, Richard, you've got to man up a bit," or "Come on, you're depressed. What do you mean you're depressed?" You know what I mean? They're not going to have that welcoming, that welcoming sort of big hug that we want.
Yeah, I think it depends on the parents and who your parents are. So if your parents are proper cultural, traditional, hardcore African parents,
you can't cry, you can't be sad, you can't do anything.
You've got about a 0 to slim chance to really convincing them that I'm going. Because what is depression to them really? Like when they were fetching buckets of water by the ocean or whatever, and having to carry that bucket on their head, and then coming home, and you hear these stories like they're like, I didn't have shoes, I couldn't go to school, and then when we come here, we've got education, we've got heat, we've got water, we've got food in our belly, we're going to school. What possibly can make us depressed compared to what they went through? Do you know what I'm saying?
That's
So
a good point.
I think if your parents have an opened mind, then yes.
I mean, I agree with you, Pricilla. Do you feel as if, I know obviously their upbringing was different to ours, but I mean, I think for our generation, we can't help that when we were born into a nice house with heating, with nice clothes, with nice shoes. We can't help that. you know. So it's what we know, isn't it? When we're growing up, you know, we know that we're going to get a nice pack lunch to school. We're going to get an Uber to work, or, you know, get a nice little coat for winter. You know, we're sort of born into that, so we can't really help that. I guess I think we can be a bit more appreciative.
I mean,
we could.
I was thinking, right? I was thinking maybe our parents were depressed, but they just didn't know.
I think that. I 100% agree. I think that all the time. I think they have to fight through it.
Yeah, I think
100%. 100%.
Surely carrying a bucket of water on your head, I mean, jeez, that'd
do a lot of damage.
But at the end of the day, I think it's about progression. So they didn't really notify that they were going through mental health if they. And like, I think that we know more about, like, our generation, we know more about it now. So when, like, we have our kids and stuff, we can identify, like, what's going on and stuff like that. So I just think it's more about progression. Like,
it is about progression, but remember, they also come from a culture where everything is witchcraft with Jesus. Like, there's no in between.
Yeah.
It's either gauze and grey, or your witch, your auntie's like a juju master, and you pray off. You know what I'm saying? So, Africa, they're very extreme. There's no maybe there was no such thing. And I mean, let's be real. Like, Africa is still quite behind when it comes to the Western world. So mental health is only becoming something new to them. Do you know what I'm saying? They still kind of see mental health as a evil thing or evil spirit. They still have it's coming in a bit more and more. But, like, I mean, when you go to, like, certain parts of Ghana, or, I mean, not even Ghana, but certain parts of Africa, is there anything of like a mental health worker, or, you know, a social worker or a psychiatrist? You're not hearing that. That's not even a role in Africa. But slowly but surely it'll progress. So, like, like you said, it is progression.
I mean, Pricilla, do you think pressure plays a big part in sort of, you know, mental? I know you've worked with a lot of people. I mean, what is sort of the most common reason why people become depressed and, you know, sort of anxious?
How to cope. I think, you know, when I talk to my guys, when we're doing groups, I talk to them, and I'm like, you know, because these guys, they're doing like crack, heroin, cocaine, and I'm just like, you know, why are you doing these things? Like, you're here now you're in prison, and they're just like, you know, we just couldn't cope. And I'm just like, couldn't cope with what? Like, you know, and they're like, the stresses of life, something as small as losing a job, or, you know, and it's so funny because you never think that these things can be triggers, but the main triggers in most situations where someone, you know, has a deterioration in their mental health is like, you know, a family member dying, a relationship breakdown, you know, financial issues. So someone losing their job, or like, I mean, and it has a knock-on effect. So someone can lose their job, and then all of a sudden they've got loads of bills, and then they're going into a place where they're now losing their house, and then, you know, your family, your wife is now ready to leave you, and all these things, you know, in one combined can cause someone to, you know, in the beginning, the thing is, we don't catch it early on. So, for instance, if one of my guys are saying, okay, you know what, well, my mom was going through this, because, you know, there's a lot of young guys in my prison as well, a lot of young black men as well. So you'll hear stories like, you know, my mom was going through this, and, you know, miss, I just had to, you know, do 1, 2, 1, 2, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, I got caught in here. And I just think that's where we're failing. We're failing to learn how to cope with life and with situations, because society kind of paints this picture that, you know, everything is blessed, everything is all good. But then I think if everything is all good, people wouldn't be committing suicide the way they do. Celebrities wouldn't be committing suicide the way they do. It's all about coping mechanisms and how do we cope with the stresses of life. And I also think as well that we're not here for each other the way we used to be. So the beautiful thing about Africa and the generation our parents grew up in is that everyone knows everyone. Do you understand? So, you know, you can never do something bad and your mother won't hear about, because please believe your mom is going to hear about it because that neighbor saw you do it. It was a community. Whereas here, there's no such thing as a community. So if someone's struggling, they're struggling on their own, and then we don't want to tell anybody that we're struggling because of pride and ego, and we don't want to make people, you know, feel bad for us. We don't want to be a trophy case. You know what I'm saying? So,
good point.
it's become so difficult for us as human beings to share our fears and our burdens and our problems. And now, because we struggle to do that, we're struggling to cope with life. But then I feel like we're here on this earth to be in relationships with everyone, whether platonic, whether to be in love, whatever. At the end of the day, a neighbor is a neighbor for a reason, but it's not happening that way. You know, everyone kind of keeps their nose to themselves, and so that's what I think.
I think this actually needs to be like put on a school curriculum type of thing, because like the stuff that we used to learn in school, I don't think I use any of that right now. Like I think like mental health is like it's more life related, and like you could help either whether you're going through it or you know someone else that's going through it, you'll be able to help the person, like
almost like a life skills kind of thing, right?
I think there needs to be more life skilled like type teachers introduced into schools and stuff like that, so that when people grow up, they know how to cope. Like I think that's the key word, cope. Like you gotta know how to cope with situations that come up in life, right? Otherwise you're just gonna turn to something that could lead to like a bad road type of thing.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I've never asked any of you guys this question, but have any of y'all had a mental health breakdown or anything?
No, never. I've been stressed at work though, but that's not really something. I don't know. Really, it's. I guess, like you guys mentioned, you can have it without noticing you're actually having a mental health breakdown. But I don't really feel as if I've had one of those, to be honest. I think you've had moments where.
But then I guess what's the definition of a breakdown?
Yeah.
That's what we have to start.
I think I mean, some people actually, if you're having a bad day at work, you get up, walk out of the office, go in the toilet for like half an hour or whatever. Is that a breakdown? Would you say, Pricilla?
No, you're having a bad day.
Yeah. A lot of bad days then.
I think when it becomes, I think personally, when it becomes consistent, so everyone has a bad day, everyone has a negative day. But when it's a consistent thing that you find yourself, maybe like for a female, maybe she's crying every day after work.
All right, yeah.
When it's consistent, like 1 week, 2 weeks, and it's affecting your relationships with others, it's affecting your work life, then that's when you think, okay, sis, you might need support. But even something as small as, not being happy within yourself, obviously the big main one is always like having suicidal thoughts or something like that. It may not necessarily mean you're having a mental health breakdown, but you still need that support.
Would you say like not being where you want to be in life and being a little bit depressed about that? Would you say like that's a lack of mental?
Yeah, I don't think it's a mental health deterioration, because I feel like everyone once in a while will go through that. But even when you feel like I don't know if I'm making it, or I can't lie, I feel like I'm even in that place now, just like at my age, what am I doing with myself? And I just it's one of those things I'm like, maybe I should just go into therapy and just, get another perspective and just talk about it and just see. So I feel like it may not necessarily be a mental health breakdown, but it's always good, even if you don't need a therapist, it's always good to talk to someone else that you trust and that you see as a mentor or someone that you look up to just talk about it, because you're able to hear what someone else has to say. And, we are our biggest critique. So sometimes we can be very hard on ourselves, and having someone else come and speak to us will help us, and having someone else to come and help us, just to be like, okay, so if you're struggling here, maybe you should do X, Y, and Z, and that little piece of advice will take you to your next step.
I think some of it comes a lot from putting expectation and pressure on ourselves as well, because I think it all comes from comparing ourselves to other people. So a lot of times we look at what we haven't got rather than what we have got. So a lot of us, we have skill sets, we've got qualities that maybe we overlook because we see somebody else who's got a bit more than us. So I think it's a lack of sort of accepting what we can do, and what sometimes a lot of us put pressure on ourselves, but we haven't got, we're not in the right circumstance to actually be like somebody else. So people have got a nice house, nice car, but we haven't got financially that power to do that right now. So what we then do is we put pressure on ourselves, and then we begin to look negatively upon everything. Whereas you've got a nice roof over your head anyway. You've got clothes on your back. You've got water. You've got food on your table every day. You know, the things that are important to other people, we overlook those. Do you know what I mean? So,
and you know, with like social media and all of that, it's like we look at other people's lives and like, why is mine not like that?
But the thing you got to remember about social media is that people put on social media what they want you to see, though.
Yeah, that's true.
So you know, they could be putting pictures up of, you know, themselves and their couple on nice holidays, whatever, but behind closed doors, I don't know what's going on.
It's true. You know what's so funny? Like recently, like a lot of things that I've seen, especially when it comes to like relationships, like they look so happy, and then like 2 weeks later they've broken up, and I just think, so why portray this lifestyle that you know you're not living? But I feel like it takes a mature person to see that. Until you've come to a place and a realization that, like, listen, social media, as you rightfully said, is a place where people want to post things of, you know, the good times. You're not going to ever see people on social media crying and saying my life is terrible, and, you know, you get what I'm saying? Like, until, you know, the world comes to a place where they can realize that, then we'll forever be comparing ourselves to people that we don't even know. Yeah,
I think there's also a pressure of us like becoming successful like as early as possible, rather than like when it's the right time. I feel like when it's the right time, like you'll be successful. But I just think there's because like Oprah, like the successful people that are in like the world right now, they weren't successful until they were like in their 40s and their late 30s and stuff. But I think now, like nowadays, it's like there's pressure for us to like become successful in like our 20s.
The thing is, there's people telling you out there like you can make money, you know, overnight. If you buy one click, you could make this amount. You could have a whole career in this amount of time. So you're putting that pressure on yourself to match that, really. Whereas people like you mentioned, like Oprah and stuff, they've literally had to work their whole life to get to where they are right now. And I think as a generation, we don't accept or understand hard work sometimes.
No,
we want everything to come to us, you know, just like that. But I think from our generations growing up, you know, mental health wasn't spoken about 15 years ago. You know, if you're, you know, running around in PE, like I said, you know, to these guys before, you know, if someone said to you, Richard, you know, you've lost weight, you really need to, I mean, you need to lose a bit of weight because you're just not moving around as you should. You know, I'll have to get on with it. I think nowadays, when you tell it to someone, you know, they're on YouTube trying to search, you know, how do I react to this and that? Do you know what I mean? It's, you know,
would you say that we're quite like we're more fragile?
I think we're more fragile as a generation. I feel as if growing up we've had 100%. A lot of things given to us, whereas when we were growing up, actually, you know, we didn't have these luxuries that these guys have got right now. You know, they've got YouTube channels to look at how to become a better person. They've got, you know, iPads with different applications on there. Back then, we had to buy books. We had to really graft and do stuff ourselves. You know, I'm not saying that's not a bad thing for the guys now. I think they're very lucky, but sometimes, you know, hard work is what we overlook, and it's what will get you to where you need to be. Do you know what I mean? Like for me personally, in my career so far, I've had to sacrifice a lot because I've had to do internships that don't pay me, but later on you do get paid because you put in the work for it. You know what I mean? But people want to do that now. Does that make sense?
No, I totally agree. I agree. I mean, I just saw online that like over 16 million people suffering with mental health. One thing which has been quite a big thing, which is anxiety.
Yeah.
You know, like, what is it like? What is anxiety? I don't know. What is it?
I think worrying that you can't control. So worry becomes a thing where it's become out of control, and you can't sort of wake up one morning and not sort of
worry about something.
Yeah,
I think in a nutshell, it's like worrying
you become scared of life, basically.
Worrying about the outcome of something. That's what I think anxiety is like. Just worrying about the outcome of something.
So that means we've all kind of suffered anxiety at exams, not really knowing what the outcome could be.
That's good anxiety, though.
Okay,
there's bad anxiety where you so there's different types of anxiety. So let's talk about like OCD. OCD is a type of anxiety, right? Where someone has to do something a certain amount of times before they feel some type of peace, and they don't even have that peace because they do it the same way every single day. That's anxiety because it affects them, doesn't it? Whereas, you know, flight or flight, when they teach you in biology, flight or flight. Whereas with an exam, that anxiety, that's that rush. Once that exam is over, you're okay. because at the moment you kind of don't know what's happening, but it's a good thing. You do your test or whatever, and then it's kind of like, all right, cool, calm. And then you might have that little anxiety for the result, but that's a normal that's normal. When it becomes a problem is like you hear people that say they can't go outside. They have social anxiety because, they don't know what's going to happen to them. You have people, like what I was saying, people that just literally worry about the outcome of everything. Like you'll be sitting at a table, someone that's anxious will be sitting at a table, and they're so anxious that they can't even focus on maybe their dinner or what's in front of them, because they're so worried about the person that's next to them, the person that's behind them, what people are thinking about. The things that go through a person's mind that's anxious is mad. Like and it's hard to cope with. It's honestly hard to cope with.
Yeah, that's a good point that you brought up. Like, there's good anxiety and there's bad anxiety.
Yeah.
I didn't look at it like that, but as soon as you said that, I realized,
So it's basically your body's in fight or flight mode. But imagine your body constantly being like in flight mode, like so it's either you run or you stand and fight.
Yeah.
And imagine your body is constantly running, like all the time. So that anxiety that you feel when you're taking an exam is anxiety that you're living with 24/7, like 7 days a week straight. That's not good for the body. It's not at all.
It's not at all.
So what would you say, like, for folks which are Christians, right, and they're experiencing some form of mental health, but yet you're a Christian, you're not supposed to be, well, putting inverted commas, you're not supposed to be experiencing such things, right? You know what I mean? Because the Lord has delivered you from anxiety, depression, and so on and so forth. How would you say the church can better equip themselves to deal with this type of thing?
I think the church, if the church could have personal counselors, it would be great. Number two, I think, fair enough, you've been delivered, but it doesn't eradicate the fact that we're humans and we have a mind, and remember, God has given us free will. So regardless if we're delivered or not, like, we still have choices to do things. We still have our own way of thinking. We're not like robots because we're Christians. So I personally think that the church should invest in mental health workshops. I think the church should invest in counselors. And I'm all here for prayer. I will never say don't pray, but they shouldn't deny the beauty in being able to speak about your worries and your troubles and your issues, because the mind is a powerful thing. I mean, even in the Bible, like when you read the New Testament, Paul talks about the mind and how powerful our mind is. So if our mind is powerful, and if our mind is let's say, our car to success, then of course the enemy's number one attack is going to be on the mind. Therefore, you cannot expect that by praying and fasting, the things in which we think about are going to go away, because we're still thinking about it. You cannot create a thought away. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have a situation, be able to navigate your thoughts. Like that's what therapy does. It helps you navigate your thoughts. Why are you thinking like this? It helps you understand your actions, because a lot of people don't realize that before they've acted out on something, they've thought about it. So something as small as, for example, money. Once upon a time, money was not discussed in church. Becoming successful was not discussed at church. Buying a house and things like that, property, was not discussed at church. But slowly but surely, the church started to realize, like, wait a minute, as Christians, you're not supposed to be broke. You're not supposed to be sitting here asking for money and renting and borrowing. Like, if we're going to say we're going to be the head, we need to be the head financially as well. So therefore, let's teach people how to get their money right. It's the same way you need to teach people how to get their mind right and how to think right. And it's not even to say that you will never have a bad day, because you will. But once again, it goes back to being able to cope with the stresses of life. Because even in church, we all think that we're doing great. No one in church wants to ask for help either. We all sit there and think, everyone's happy. We come with our best dressed on Sunday. Little do you know that this lady is 7 months behind rent, and she doesn't know how to deal with it, and she's probably got some family issues, and now she doesn't know what to do, and she's probably had a mental health breakdown. But rather than, her being able to speak to someone about it, and maybe she has spoken to someone about it, but the response will come through. No, you are the reason why God placed you here for a reason, to be a helper. We cannot sit here and be like, pray about everything. God has placed human beings on this earth for a reason, and sometimes we're seeking a miracle, but our miracle may come from the next person that's standing next to us. So I feel the church should, the same way they invested in business and property and teaching, they should have mental health workshops.
It's true. The church actually, they've got a lot of things besides like the core problem why people struggle. To be honest, that they invest in, all that material stuff, but the important thing is your people, your congregation actually makes up your church. It seems as if people are overlooking those people, but I agree. I think sometimes you have to maybe put that pride aside and realize it is okay to ask for help. I think people want to ask for help, but again, it's seen as I'm a weak person. I haven't got the strength and stuff. So it's a big issue, definitely. I mean, what advice would you give to someone who feels if they may be depressed or might be a bit anxious? I mean, what can they do day to day to maybe sort of feel a bit better?
Okay, well, day to day, I think it just depends on the person's lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, so let's, for instance, the guys I work with, clearly they're in prison. So I always encourage my guys to go to the gym. But I think eating right, because I took a course, and little do you know how much food affects your mind and the brain chemistry in your mind.
Nutrition.
Just the type of breakfast that you eat in the morning, the way it fuels your mind, that helps. So eating right is number one. Number two would be, I always encourage people, especially if you're in an office-based environment with a lot of stress, I always encourage people to take walks when they can.
Oh, that's what I was
Get some fresh air. If it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just if you have a 30-minute break, just take 10 minutes to go and get some fresh air, because little do you know how much that really helps. So rather than going to bed, scrolling on your phone, take an hour to read. Because the light alone in your phone affects your brain, and it affects how you sleep at night. So reading rather than using your phone at night. I would also say try to kind of I think it's, like I said, it depends on what type of place the person is in. So if you're feeling anxious and nervous about something, like I said, speak to someone about it, speak to your friends about it. If you need to go and get therapy, go to get therapy or counseling about it. But I mean, it's a difficult one, because everyone's anxiety and depression is different. But these are some of the general tips I would say. And I would say get active. So if you can go to the gym, like I said, take a walk, join a group if you can. Or self-care is definitely number one. So I always tell, especially guys don't really do self-care. So I feel like it's more of a female thing. But if it's taking yourself out on a spa trip, if it's taking yourself out to the movies, if you have once or twice in a month that you can look forward to just focusing on you, spending time with yourself, do it. Just taking care of yourself,
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's real interesting. The whole self-care. I think folks have missed out on that. That's a trick right there. Self-care.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
It helps a lot. Yeah.
Thought about that. Something to look forward to for yourself. Because I think sometimes a lot of people spread themselves so thin, they forget about themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes people forget about you as well. So if you don't remember yourself, you know what I mean? It becomes something. I think that is very, very interesting. Oh man. What, you guys got anything else you want to add?
I think we've covered quite a lot of points actually.
Yeah, Pricilla done all the work.
That is awesome, man. Pricilla, man, we just want to thank you again,
thank
for
you
jumping
guys.
on literally last
minute. Yeah, we appreciate that a lot.
It's a lot, and for sure, definitely, I know there's a lot more to talk about. Steering away from mental health and everything else. So we definitely gonna give you a shout the next time we we out here doing something again, and possibly we might even come up to you actually, and actually just
that'd be good.
Be there together.
Yeah,
that definitely.
Yeah, that'd be dope. Can I just add my Instagram page?
Yeah,
please do. Yeah, go for it. Facebook, Twitter, everything.
So it's SHEIS_UK. You can find it on Instagram. So it's all about mental health. Yeah, self-care, everything.
Big time, and for sure we'll put all the links and everything in descriptions, headers, all of that good stuff. And support the cause, guys. You know, Pricilla is doing a lot of great stuff within the mental health space, and not just that, in general, because when you're a great person, you just do great things, and you just just do your thing, right? So
100%.
So that's what it is.
So keep up the good work, Pricilla.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
All right, guys. So, again, this podcast is all about you guys. So, it's time to have your say now. So, we're on different social media channels. So we're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Our Twitter handle is EEViews. The same thing for Instagram as well. Also find us on Facebook, EEViews on there too. We're trying to conduct polls on a daily basis to sort of get your opinions on the latest, whether it's sports, whether it's news, politics, entertainment. Feel free to sort of comment in our comment sections. If you've got any questions or any topics you want to speak about, feel free to get in touch, and we're happy to do so. I mean, it's all about you guys. It's all about having your say on this channel. So feel free to get in touch.